All right. Well, welcome everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So, as I mentioned in the post, I am still doing some traveling today, heading back to Darth's place. I've been on a bit of an adventure in the recent weeks, and yeah, yeah, it's been really wonderful. It really has been a wonderful time. Took a moment away from regular shows to spend time with family. So I left Darth's place on or a few weeks ago to go. Well, it just sort of all lined up. I went initially to go visit or go help out in West Virginia with the Foxhole Foundation. We spent a few days there building a wheelchair ramp and deck for Tom Jervis, who's a veteran who had his home lost in a recent flood, uh, and yeah, it was outside of the Hurricane Helene damage, but they had a flood in February, which was very devastating and not really talked about. So uh, went there to help build that, and that was right on my road to Memphis, which is where my parents live, and I needed to go there to take care of a few things and get my vehicle worked on a bit. And fortunately, it got me there. Um, but that turned into a whole other thing, as I mentioned uh, the other week, on that when I got it in to take it a look at. Basically, the whole front end suspension was going pretty bad. Like one of the wheels had enough play where I couldn't even get an alignment done on it properly, and they said, "Yeah, the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we replace basically everything on the front end suspension." And when they gave me the quote for how much that was going to cost with parts and labor, it was going to be well over what the car was worth itself. So it's it was a pretty, I'd gotten a lot of it. It had I think like 240,000 miles on it, and yeah, I had it was well loved for sure. And so I didn't want to invest a whole lot of money into it, not knowing it's the same transmission and engine from original. So I don't know how much longer I had on those. So it didn't make sense pouring more into it than what the vehicle was worth. So yeah, during that time, it was, yeah, as I mentioned on the last quest on 2 weeks ago, it was kind of one of those moments where I was just trying to figure out what to do. I had, fortunately, I have some savings in precious metals, but it's always kind of painful to dip into those, knowing what those values will go to. Um, but that's ended up what I needed to do. And thank you to everyone who reached out to try and offer some helpful solutions. There were several very kind individuals who offered to help any which way, um, some of which in other countries. And yeah, it just wasn't very feasible to send things that method. But what I ended up doing is I have just a little bit, because I often talk about silver as being the one that I put most into, because I feel like that's the one that's going to boost the most, that's going to catapult the most. But gold will still do very well also. So it's not a bad thing to have gold. And if you, especially if you're dealing with space restrictions, you can obviously invest a lot more into a much tighter space because an ounce of gold is over $3,000, and an ounce of silver is 30 something dollars. So yeah, it's big difference space wise. So I had just a little bit of gold, and I felt better about selling that as opposed to the silver, just because while the gold price will go up quite a bit, it's not going to go up nearly as much from a ratio wise as the silver will. So yeah, so I didn't feel as bad about parting with that. And just a note, if any of you are selling your precious metals in the U.S., just want to share a positive experience that I had selling with JM Bullion. So certainly not sponsored or anything by them, but yeah, I've bought from them in the past, and it's always been a very smooth process to order things, and they ship it very securely, and everything always goes very smoothly with that. But they also have a selling service, which I'd heard about, but I'd never used before. And when I went around town to see what the local uh, coin, like gold and silver dealers in the area were going to give me for the gold, they were offering me several $100s under what the spot price is. And so I felt kind of weird about that. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to keep searching around. And then I checked it in Jam Bullion, and it was like nearly at the spot price. I mean, it was a little bit under because obviously they have to make some money, but I mean, it was much closer to the spot price than what these physical brick and mortar stores were going to offer me. And so the process was really simple. You lock in the price with the website, and then you can either purchase a box and shipping label and all that through them, or you can do it yourself. But doing it through them, it's all insured and everything, and they walked me through the process, and it was very simple and smooth. And within it was about maybe a week and a half, I had the cash in my account. So very simple process, and you get much more for what you're doing if you do it that way. So I really enjoyed that. So just heads up if anyone wants to go that route. But anyway, so got that all situated, got enough cash, and it was lovely spending time with my parents. So I'm glad that I was doing it all there and getting to see family, and yeah, so that was all great. But I was honestly expecting this process of getting a new vehicle, selling the old one, and all of that. I was expecting that to take weeks, if not longer. I wasn't really expecting a quick turnaround to find something, because I didn't want to go to like a dealership or something, because you never get nearly as good of a deal. I mean, sometimes, but rarely you get as good of a deal at a dealership than buying privately. So that's what I was going to do. But you also don't want to jump in too quickly to buying something privately, because you never know what other issues you're going to find with it. And so, as I said, I was expecting this to take a really long time to get all this squared away. And, but as the divine does, when things need to shift or change, and I had a moment where I was like, why is this happening? Why I was wanting this old vehicle to last me until after the EBS, till after society sort of falls apart, and the silver price boost off. And so I was hoping that was going to happen, but obviously that wasn't in the divine plan. And so I was just like, why is this happening? This is kind of annoying. Not like nothing major. I mean, I would say it was maybe like an hour, an hour where I was like, fuck, this is really annoying. After I got the bill or the quote from the car replacement, sort of setting in with the idea that I was going to need to get a new one and all that. But it was so fast. Everything happened so quickly when I just was like, okay, this needs to happen, obviously. And I could either be upset about it, or I could just roll with it, just move along with it. And it was that same day when I started looking. I'm pretty sure this was like the first listing on Facebook Marketplace that I looked at. It was the same. So I had a 2003 Chevy Tahoe, and I wanted to get another one because it's nice to have something that can tow, and I like having something with four-wheel drive that I can get around and go out into things in an easier way. And especially living up near Darts, I don't know for sure if I'll do another winter up there, but if I do, it's nice to have four-wheel drive. And I'm staying in a camper trailer, and so I wanted to have something that could tow that. And so I kid you not, I really think it was the very first listing that I looked at was a 2008 Chevy Tahoe that, so just a little bit newer. Um, it had the heavy duty tow package and everything with it. And I started communicating with them, and it took a few days to go see it. But after talking with them, it was like a very lovely family, not too far away. And yeah, she was like, the only reason we want to get rid of this, like we love this car. It's our it's our family car. But the only reason we're looking for something different is because she was doing a commute to go to college. She just wanted something with a little bit better gas mileage. And so, like there was nothing wrong with it. And I looked under, I inspected it as best as I could, and um, checked out the parts, especially that were failing in the other Tahoe. And those had all been replaced. So this one has already had suspension work done on it. It's all like new, relatively new, nice stuff underneath. And yeah, it's very well taken care of. And it has, I think this one has, what is it? Yeah, it's about 100,000 miles less. So this one's about just over 140,000. So I've got something that, yeah, it's quite a bit of, it's a little bit of an upgrade, and they gave me a really good deal on it, and it's everything that I need. And my aunt was asking me if I was sad about losing the old Tahoe, because I've spent a lot of time in it. I spent the all 2020 living in it, and it was a very nice setup, and went to some very wonderful, beautiful places, and did a whole lot of exploring, and traveled back and forth all across this country and in and out of Mexico many times. So I've done a lot of things in it. So she was asking me if I was like sad about losing it, and I was like, yeah, a little bit, but I was joking because when I was test driving this newer Tahoe, and I felt the AC on my face because in my old one I didn't have AC. It was always just like, if it's hot outside, I'm just gonna have to get used to sweating profusely and just having like a pool of sweat in my seat. All of that, it was just part of it, and I just got used to it. But when I felt that AC on my face as I was driving it, I was like, okay, I'm not so sad about this. This is quite nice, and it has been. It's been wonderful. So got all that taken care of. Got the old one sold, and it's like, even being very honest about the issues with what was going on with that one, there's still a very desired model of vehicle. So I still was able to make a decent amount from it and cut into the cost of getting the other one, and I got all of that done in a week. So it might, yeah, maybe even less than a week, to where I had registration transferred over, like all that insurance transferred over, everything done, and then it was just packing and getting ready to head off again. So I mean, my dad was amazed. He was amazed that I was able to get all of it done so quickly, and I was too. So just goes to show the it's like those little moments where we get to practice staying in faith, and trusting that it's all going to work out, and it's all as it needs to be. And when we do that, then we allow the flow to move. But if we're resistant to it, or if we're staying in doubt or skepticism or any of these kind of things, then we're like inhibiting the flow, and it actually sends a signal to the divine to give us opportunities to release, to surrender, which some people interpret as just having strange hardship that happens to them, or I don't know why this always takes so long, or why I'm always suffering or going through this or that. It's like, well, maybe we should try stop fighting it, like stop resisting whatever needs to happen. And that's why surrender is so powerful. That's why it's such a it it's so consistent. It's so consistent of something that we can lean into and stay in. And of course it's challenging at times, because we enjoy playing a challenging game. This is a challenging experience, and it's supposed to be. That's how we learn. That's how we go through this whole vibrant experience of forgetting that I am God. As blasphemous as that might sound to someone, but we needed to go through that process of forgetting that we are gods. We're God. Whatever, however you want to view it, whatever makes you comfortable. Yeah, child of God, layers of consciousness, aspects of the Creator. It's all one and the same. But we wanted to go through that process of forgetting that so that we could go through the joy and the challenge of remembering again. Sometimes we might feel that challenge is a bit too much. But when you know that you are eternal, when you know that death in the physical is no thing to worry about, then all the other stuff just becomes layers of opportunity to expand into. And I mean, there is something just so powerful of going through that story, that hero's journey of falling into the depths and remembering again. And so it's opportunities like that really, just speaking for myself, but I feel it's so helpful to really affirm that and step into it in such a greater way. So that was a really powerful experience that I had recently, and this was all in between spending lots of wonderful time with family and getting to enjoy that, which is always great. And so I left Memphis to go to my parents' cabin in North Carolina, which is, um, if you remember, it was near where I went and sort of had my um, first big join in with the Foxhole Foundation. So another sort of divine synchronicity that their house was very close to that whole area. And so I went back there because they were going to be going there and help them to do they're working on some renovations. And it's a really lovely, like, it's one of the oldest cabins in the area, and it's got a beautiful view. And so, but it needed quite a bit of work. So they're doing some renovation work on it. So I went to help them with that, and just get to spend some lovely time in the mountains. And then yeah, so spent about a week there. Um and then last night I got to spend wonderful time with Donatika. So um yeah, I always love connecting with her and her family, and um, it was really quite wonderful. So, and then today I am making the trip all the way back up to upstate New York, where Darth and Joanna and their wonderful family is, and that's where Kali is, my dog. And I don't, I always, at times I get sad that I don't have her with me. Of course, she's very precious to me, but she's not traveling is not her favorite thing to do. So it's not something that I enjoy subjecting her to if I don't need to. And I also have a hard time with um, with my parents' dogs because they still eat kibble and stuff, and that stuff is just so addicting for dogs. And I don't really like, trying to make them put the food up somewhere that other spaces, because they just leave the food out for their dogs to eat. And so and I did that once, or the last time I brought Kali into that space. She got into the kibble, and when I left their house, she had this huge boil, like this massive pus-filled sac on her back had developed, and it was there. And I have no doubt that it was due to her eating this toxic stuff that she doesn't normally eat. So yeah, that's why she's been up there. But of course, she's in a wonderful space, and she absolutely loves hanging out with their family, and they love her because she's just an absolute angel. And so she goes around and does all the chores and feeding the animals and spending time outside. And I saw on Sienna's story on Instagram, she had a picture of Kali and one of their cats just sitting side by side looking out into the yard. So it's very, very well loved by all the creatures and, and, and beings there and all of that, and just get back into kind of the routine of things. Of course, to take a step away, yeah, take a break. But as I'm doing today, I thought about taking another week and just starting back up next week. But I miss you guys, and I wanted to have the opportunity to speak and see if anyone else wants to chime in or talk about anything. So I figured while I'm on my route, in between the wonderful things that I love to listen to, driving long distance, some people are always shocked when they hear like how far I will drive and how far I'll go in a day or how often I do trips and things like that. But it's such a great time to catch up on podcasts and talk with people and all that good stuff. So I really don't mind it at all. And the most recent one I've shared, I shared it on through the Eye of JC channel, which is if you're not aware, that's another channel that I started to just share more abundantly in things that I listen to, not necessarily where I agree with everything 100% of what's being said, but I put it there just to kind of, it's a helpful log for me to go back and listen to things again if I want to. But I figured I'd share with others if anyone wants to tune in. So I shared this podcast, and thanks to Roxy for sharing this. I like immediately bought his book as well, but it's a interview with this guy named Jefferson Fisher, who talks about communication and the importance of communication and just how to. So he's a lawyer, and just the skills that he's used to navigate sort of tense and difficult situations, and so he sort of translated that into how we can use these methods to have more harmonious communication. And like he starts the conversation with like uh, the problem that a lot of people have is trying to win an argument. You know, we get into some kind of conflict or argument, and we want to win. We want to be right, and they're wrong, and all of that. And he's like, the only time that you really want to do that is if you want that relationship to dissolve or to suffer. You know, that's there is no really winning an argument. So just finding ways to, he talks about in there how to when you're confronted with a difficult situation, you know, there's something happened and miscommunication or whatever led to some form of conflict. And so instead of like trying to prove that I'm right and that they're wrong and that they need to apologize and all that, but just approaching it with okay, where's the knot? Where's the knot? Where's the hiccup? Where's the thing that is not your fault or my fault or any of that? Where's the thing where we stepped out of harmony? Where's the discord? Where's that discord pattern? And it pairs very well with nonviolent communication. He does things in a similar way. But I feel like expands on it in a much more nonviolent communication can get kind of, while it's very useful to use as a framework, sometimes it feels very like boxy or restrictive to always speak in that way. So some of the tools he gave are just really helpful and practical to, just to having more opportunities to learn from each other and not be so combative, be so quick to jump at each other's throats and all of that. And, you know, he even gives things, it's like there are times where people are just straight up like they don't want resolution, they don't want anything better. So having ways to dispel that sort of venomous behavior that can come out of people when they are trying to harm us with their words, and give them an opportunity to see it. So dispel the conflict, dispel the energy from what was happening, but also give us like not stoop to that level. So anyway, I thought it's just a phenomenal podcast, and I'm really looking forward to reading the book because I learned so much just in that 2 hour window. And it's stuff that I do naturally a lot of times. Like I do find myself to be a fairly efficient and effective communicator. This is something that's always come naturally to me. But just to have it broken down in a way that you can relate to it and see it and areas where I know that I can improve, like, is very helpful. So can't recommend that enough. But all that to say, so thanks again, Roxy, for sharing that. And but yeah, all of that really came from that's why I love to drive and do these kind of things as well. So yeah, that's that. And yeah, there's certainly other things I could talk about, but I'll just give a little pause there and see if anybody wants to jump in. If anyone's got like the Quest Ions, but a little bit less, even less formal than that, if it could be, of just whatever's on anybody's heart, any experience anybody wants to share, questions that have come up, or things that have, yeah, whatever's on your mind is this is an open space to share. Um, I'm not going to be able to review. I've still got the log of written questions that people have sent me in recent weeks, and I'll definitely address those. But just because I'm driving, I don't really want to be looking at the screen, so I won't be reading off any written questions. But of course, anyone is welcome to ask any questions that are here. So I'll just give a quick pause and see if anybody wants to jump in. All right, no worries. And feel free to jump in if you do find yourself moved in any capacity. So another thing I wanted to talk about is sort of just a follow up to the because this created a lot of buzz, and it just goes to show how many layers of there's still cognitive dissonance that we can fall into in any capacity, you know, and if we're getting attached to something that we just because we've let go of some other lie and then we get attached to some other thing that we find we think is the truth. But if we stay attached to that and we're not open to continually evolving and learning new things, then we're just falling into the same pattern that got us into this mess in the first place. So the thing that kind of came up recently was the show on sugar with Freely the Banana Girl. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, it's one of I, I loved it. I thought it was just a really great interview, really good to connect with her, and she's been somebody that I've admired for some time. You know, ever since I got into the frugivore way, she's definitely been a very powerful voice, and her advice has always been very practical and helpful. And she's definitely not afraid to say it like it is, and that's gotten her to be quite unpopular with some people who she's called out for, um, you know, selling whatever and not really illustrating the whole picture or any of that kind of stuff. So anyway, the topic that she's felt most passionate about recently is this drawing attention to sugar. And we know this in this group. We know that glucose and fructose are the primary sources of fuel for our body. Glucose used primarily by the brain, fructose by the liver, um, which she does a great job at sort of expanding in that. But where she's felt most called for is to dispelling the myth that demonizes table sugar. So refined sugar, which is just that in its simplest, most basic form with nothing else in it. So the highest form of fuel in the physical form when we're consuming things is sugar. So there's somewhere along the way we started to make this stretch, whether pushed by propaganda trying to demonize that which is good for us or whatever. We started to find. I'm speaking from myself because I certainly have thought this way, but somehow we made the leap, even though we know that fruit is good and fruit sugar is great and it's a beautiful source of fuel for our body. But then all of a sudden, if it's extracted into its purest form, all of a sudden that turns into a demon. and that's horrible, and it's killing us, and we have to stay far away from it, and any touch, even touching or looking at it is going to bring us harm. And it was just something that I fully thought and went along with, and not to my detriment or anything like that, because of course fruit is still the highest form of that, because it's got the complete package. It's got the water, the hydration, it's got the minerals, and it's the phytonutrients, the captured sunlight, all of that. So it's definitely the highest form, and I would never suggest otherwise. And Freely made that very clear as well. She's not saying that fruit is somehow inferior to refined sugar, but her thing is just to question why do we demonize this stuff so much when it can be a very helpful tool to supplement, to add to our repertoire. So if we were all in ideal state and living in a space where fruit grew abundantly and we could pick it and we grew it ourselves and all that good stuff, and the soil wasn't uh, depleted and everything was working as this beautiful natural creation was intended, then yeah, there would be no even real consideration to looking for something like that. But in today's day and age, that's built on a system of scarcity where people do, even people who recognize that this is the way, they often struggle to find either financially support themselves to get the amounts needed, or find the quality of things that they can consume that are raw and living and full of that goodness. So she's just offering that this is something that we can tap into and use and utilize. That's not going to harm us, and it can help boost us in a lot of ways. We talked a little bit about the diabetes misconception, which I think What the Health does a really good job at breaking that down and showing it, just how diabetes is not caused by sugar. It's caused by primarily it's caused by fat disrupting the insulin process, so that sugar is not able to be processed out of our blood, because it's full of, if we eat a high fat diet, then we're going to have an abundance of fat in our blood, and then that disrupts the insulin's ability of transporting the sugar to the cells as they're required. And so having stagnant sugar in the blood does give the appearance that the sugar is the problem, but that's what the body wants. So the issue is just the excess consumption of fats in combination with the sugars. So that's why people who go and do the keto diets where they're only consuming fat, they do find some appearance of relief because they're no longer consuming the sugars. But fat is just such an inferior form of fuel. Our bodies are miraculous. Like we are so adaptable. We are so capable of shifting and morphing and utilizing different forms. It's really amazing. But there's definitely a hierarchy of what our body wants. What's the simplest and easiest thing for it to utilize? So if we're leaning on fats as our primary form of energy, our body can do it. And in a survival scenario, sometimes this is what's needed if we're traveling long distances, or in a dire situation or whatever. Yeah, you're able to concentrate much more. It's slow burning, so you're able to concentrate much more of it in a smaller space. But the process required to convert that into an energy that the body can use is so much more taxing. It's so much more demanding on the body to be able to do that. So anyway, looking at these two forms of fuel, it would make just so much more sense to use the fuel that's simpler and easier on the body, easier to deal with, instead of relying on something that's much more taxing. So keto diets, while they might give the appearance of um, some stabilizing for a period of time, short term, they might feel something something that's helping them or seems like it's helping them, but long term, it just doesn't last. Long term, it's not sustainable. So, and that's not as like attractive for these people who are invested into this keto lifestyle. They don't want to speak about these things because all of a sudden, if you start admitting this, then 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 you have to acknowledge that, oh yeah, maybe we were wrong about this. But it is something that happens very consistently that somebody on keto can really only sustain that for, maybe a few years at the most, maybe a little bit longer, but they really start to feel some really intense consequences for sustaining in that way. And it's not a level of vitality and health that is going to lead to longevity. So I don't know where I was going with that. Yeah, so going back to the sugar demonizing, so that's part of that equation as well. So it's all just based on misconception around what's actually happening. And so I feel like that's what led to we're all aware of people who demonize fruit and say fruit because it's so full of sugar is not healthy for me. And, they'll turn to all sorts of processed garbage and medications and whatever else. But then they listen to their doctor tell them that, oh, you better be careful about how much fruit you eat because it's got so much sugar. We know that's nonsense. I mean, granted, there are some scenarios if you do find yourself in a dealing with a diabetic situation, you do have to be gentler with that approach. But the fruit's not the problem. The sugar's not the problem. So just expanding on that and dealing with refined sugar, table sugar, and if it's and something that we talked a little bit about on the show, but looking more into it, not all sugar is the same. And even her simple way of saying like throwing white sugar or the purest form at the top, there's a lot of logic to it. However, not all white sugar is made the same. So there are different like we talked a little bit about bone char that might be used in making some sugar made from beets. You can avoid that if you buy organic, or a lot of them have vegan labeling to it. It's not a necessary part of the process, but it is something that can sneak its way into. So that's something to be mindful of. So, but even organic sugar is not that expensive. I mean, you can get quite a lot of it for not very much at all. And then you just have this pure form of sucrose, which is 50% glucose, 50% fructose. Exactly what our body's looking for when it's looking for physical fuel. And yeah, and so it's just a great thing to add to the repertoire. And I have been experimenting with it for ever since I sort of it's been about a month, no, maybe a bit longer, but probably about 2 months now at this point, where I've been adding sugar to my smoothies or my juices if I just feel like they're not quite as sweet as I'd like them to be, and or I'll add them on top of watermelon or other melons if they're not quite as sweet. Or a grapefruit is amazing. we I know people have reminisced about having that as a childhood treat, where you cut the grapefruit in half and pour some sugar on top and then go at it with a spoon. It's amazing. It's so good. It's so like delicious and refreshing and just yeah. So yeah, I've been experimenting with it for about 2 months now, and I have noticed nothing but good things from it. It's not like that's not like a transforming into some superhuman right away kind of thing, but I do feel a significant boost in the meal that I'm consuming. I find my enjoyment of the meal is up there, and no downsides. I haven't experienced any downsides from doing it. I haven't noticed any issues with because I'm fairly sensitive to the things that I consume, just because I do pay attention to a lot of it. And that's the sort of some people would view this as like a double-edged sword of purifying the diet is you become a lot more sensitive to the things that you consume. So I notice when things don't feel good in my body, I don't always, I still have my wrestle with temptations with food, and I don't do anything extreme or crazy, but sometimes I will ignore those symptoms when they pop up because I want to eat the French fries or whatever, and that happens. But I work with that. But I have not noticed anything negative from consuming sugar. So just having this complete flip of expecting this thing to be a bag of demons and don't want it anywhere near me and all of that to, oh wow, this is actually a really delicious thing to add to my way. So a lot of people, like I said, this created a lot of buzz, and I'm not really concerned with convincing anyone that doesn't, isn't interested in it. It's not, like I said, it's not something that's required. You're not going to be at people can do just fine without it. However, given the financial restrictions and given the quality of fruits at times and all of that, I find it to be just a very helpful tool to implement and to use. So, um, yeah, take that as you will. If it doesn't resonate with you, that's totally fine. And we've had some good discussions about it, and I'm always open to respectful dialogue in any way. Um, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of like we're all doing this grand experience to figure out what works best, and certain things work better for some, and some things work better for others, and a lot of it's based on our beliefs and what will work and what doesn't. That's okay too. But I like to share. I like to share. I like to share, and if it helps somebody else, that's great. And so that was that conversation. But what I wanted to really get into based on that discussion was the conversation around fasting. And I didn't share much about my perspective. I did a little bit prior to with her, and I told her I wasn't intending on debating um, on anything that we disagreed on. I really wanted to just hear her perspective, and then we go from there. I think it's much more fruitful, if you will, to do things in that way instead of always being debating on stuff. So the conversation around fasting is something that I wanted to sort of give my slightly updated take on it, but still my take on my consistency with fasting. So she's very much in the camp of like, and I'll share why I see why she's there, but she's very much in the camp that fasting, especially over fasting or even intermittent fasting, can be an easy way to deplete the body and can be harmful. So she doesn't really recommend fasting at all. She's not one to recommend it to people. She's found it to be, um, yeah, just in her experience of working with people, it can be, um, from her eyes, more harm than good. So I totally respect that, and I know why she's gotten to this space because it's like anything. If we are extreme, this is not the middle path is always the way, So if we're extreme in any direction, it usually doesn't end well. So the problems with fasting are people overutilizing it when they're not ready for it. So jumping in too hard, too fast, without giving their body proper time to acclimate, without acknowledging where their system is and how well they're integrating with other forms of fuel that are outside of the the physical forms of fuel. So she's very much like a more of a physical minded fuel for our bodies, and there's nothing wrong with that. The earth does provide a physical form of sustenance that we can thrive on. So hers is about just purifying that to the highest form, which I think is absolutely wonderful. But as I've talked before, we're not limited to simply the physical forms of fuel. That's actually from from a the five elements. I love that breakdown, and that thanks to Benjamin Carter for introducing me to that, because it's all connected, right? So the five elements: earth, water, air, fire, ether, those represent the five forms of fuel that our body can tap into and utilize. And and they're kind of ordered in that way. So earth is representative of the minerals, the the sugar, the physical form of sustenance that our body can utilize and tap into. So fruit being the highest form of that physical sustenance, um, it's wonderful. And we are able to go further than that. We're able to sort of step back into and evolve our bodies back to sort of the light beings that we fell into this experience as. And it's been a devolving, if you will. Not really. I mean, it's all necessary, and it's all part of the process to go into a denser form. There's nothing bad or wrong with it, but it is what it is. And so we've fallen into this form. But it doesn't mean that we can't step into a higher form of fuel. It doesn't mean that we can't evolve and move back into these other elements and use them as sustenance for our body to move. And really, there's no need for anything external, but that's like, it's one thing to acknowledge that, you are God. And so God doesn't need anything in the external. But it's another thing to fully embody that, fully live it, as self-actualization, self-realization. So as we are shifting in that direction, we can move through these other forms. And so I mentioned earth being the lowest form, and then you have water as another form of sustenance. We can absolutely sustain. Water is very, very energizing, and going on that dry fast was like such a, I mean, I could have kept water fasting. I don't know how long, but the amount of energy that I got just on that extra day, so that seventh day of just water, it was like it was a whole nother level. It was a whole nother level of energy I felt coursing through me. And so from a traditional, physical food perspective, this wouldn't make any sense. Why would I be increasing in energy just by drinking water? But I felt it. And then you have, after that, you have the air. So the breath as a form of sustenance. And that's something that I very much felt on that as well. Like when I focused on my breath and breathing, I could feel the energy course through me. And I'm not at the level yet where I can sustain on that. But I felt the difference in the times where I was more shallow breathing and when I was more intentional with my breath. So you have that. And then above that is the fire or the sunlight, the light. So again, like sunlight is such an energizing form. It's so potent to feel that sun on your skin, to be in the light in that way. So that's the fire element. Very energizing, very possible for us to sustain on that, given the proper remembering process has taken place. So there's that. And then the last element, the fifth one, is ether. And that's the highest form, because ether is really all encompassing. There's not really like a distinguished thing that you can point to. It's literally the energy that pervades everything. So when you do fully embody and acknowledge and realize and all of that you are God, then of course, why would I need anything in the external? The ether is not really external. It's merely just the energy that's within and without everything. So that's the highest form, and it's something that we can definitely tap back into. So why does Freely and others sort of discourage fasting as a practice? Well, intellectually we can get these ideas. Like you can hear what I'm saying, I can hear what I'm saying, and I can understand it from a mental perspective. Very, very relatively simple to do. I mean, there is challenge in intellectually understanding something. Absolutely, it does take work to get that, but I can intellectually grasp that. But the difference between intellectually grasping something and fully integrating it to where it's not just a thought that I'm having or something that I'm repeating, but it's like wired into my molecular DNA structure to where my body is fully on board with it. My mind doesn't even have to process it. It's my heart is aligned with it completely, and it's a knowing. So it's not just something that I'm experimenting with. It's a full knowing. To reach that layer, and it's a spectrum. It's not like it's all at once kind of thing. That's why it's a journey. It's a process. But to reach that requires much dedication, and it's not something that we could just because I read about it in a book, I'm going to fully jump onto that, and now I'm going to be walking on water and living without any desire for food and flying through the air and all that kind of stuff. But we have that within us, so it's like this balance point, right? Of knowing that that is possible, aiming for that, but also being extremely humble and honest with myself about where I am, and incrementally moving through that. It's very pragmatic. That's why there's layers to it. There's 33 rungs in Jacob's ladder, 33 vertebrae in our spine. It's a tiered process. It's something that we move through in stages. And we don't have to limit ourselves with the concept of stages or levels or any of that kind of stuff. But it is helpful to see that, okay, here's where I am. So I'm not skipping steps. I'm not skipping layers. And so again, why she might be discouraging of people looking at fasting is because a lot of people will look to these concepts, and I've been in the same boat. Like I've talked about my healing journey and jumping into things too much, too fast, and like I survived, and I needed that experience to go through. But I went through the period of losing an extreme amount of weight and my strength and hair falling out. All sorts of things were not going, as smoothly as I'd want them to. But that's because I was not being honest with where I was. I was intellectually latching on to this concept that, this is the highest form of food. Fasting is the way, and I need to be doing that. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm not doing it right. But that's only intellectual. My body wasn't ready for it. And I wasn't like fully integrated with it. So those consequences were necessary to go through and to learn through it. But so again, that's why fasting can be a detrimental concept for those to learn about before it's ready. And that's why so many of these secret societies and higher orders, they have initiations. They implement layers that you have to be ready for in order to move into this next realm of learning. I have not been exposed to any sort of initiation or secret society or any of that kind of stuff. So, forgive me for possibly sharing things that might be a bit too dangerous for people to wrap around or look through. But I also recognize that this is the time to start to move through that. And we're moving into the age of responsibility where it doesn't need to be you don't need the bumpers up like when you're going bowling. You don't need the boundaries as much, and we can deal with the consequences as they come. But it is helpful for that perhaps disclaimer to continue to be embedded in there when we might speak on things that to someone at a certain level they might not be ready for. So to give them that option to say, hey, you might not be ready for this. Like I could share it with you, but I might not recommend that you jump into it. And fasting is one of those things that it's it's uh it's so powerful, but it's so easy to fall into that pattern of not not necessarily healing yourself any longer, but you're depleting yourself. And so I get why somebody is reserved in recommending that. I totally do. And I think on a grander scale, that's probably a much safer way potentially to ease into things and to use things like fruit cleanses, which is what she goes for, um, as a way to easily step into that. Which a fruit cleanse can be quite severe and intense for somebody stepping away from a processed food experience for however long. Sometimes even that's too much. But there's much less room for potential harm than if you go straight into trying to do hardcore long-term fasting. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people are wired that way. Some people can go that route. Some people can jump straight into things. Some people can. I don't doubt people that make claims. I mean, sure, some of them are bullshit and liars and make claims that they're breatharian and all that kind of stuff. Some of them are made up, but I know a lot of them are very truthful. I mean, obviously, I haven't like sat with them to know like what is it that you're consuming, but I don't doubt it. It's just we just have to be we just have to be honest where we are. So all that to say is I can see why she's reserved in that, and that's why I didn't want to argue with it, because on a larger scale, I think it's important to be very cognizant, aware of who are you speaking to, and is my advice going to potentially harm somebody. Now, anything that I share or anything that anybody shares, we have to be the ones to take responsibility. You know, we're moving out of this bullshit system where everyone gets sued and everyone tries to say you're responsible for my choices and all of that. Moving away from that, but at the same time, it's good to imbue care into everything and just have care that somebody might not be ready for what we're talking about. So that's that. And then yeah, so just to give my updated take on fasting, I still think it's and I know this based on my direct experience and reading testimonies. When someone is in a very dire situation, they're faced with some life-threatening illness, there's really not much, if anything, that's better than going kind of hardcore and fasting. And if you're faced with a deadly prognosis, which you shouldn't really believe from the death dealer doctors anyway. But if I were facing a serious situation, or someone I loved was willing to try something like that, it would certainly still be something that I would use, because it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much research to see how effective fasting can be and how powerful it can be in healing so much. And like I said, it's a balance. There are also instances where people go too much, too fast when they're not ready for it, or maybe the situation didn't require for it, or they didn't prepare themselves for it. So it's something to just take with caution. Take with care. Always be mindful of where you are with it. So in regards to intermittent fasting, that has been a tool that I've used long before I even realized that I wasn't designed to eat dead animals or their secretions or any of those kind of things, processed foods. Like I was still eating those things. But when I used intermittent fasting, I felt a pretty distinct improvement in my health. And it's probably back in like 2015, 2016 when I started doing this. So intermittent fasting even can be a very helpful tool, but I recognize the caveat with it. And my sort of thoughts on it now is, if you are consuming a high carb, low fat diet, because especially fruit oriented, there are other forms of carbs that are slower to digest, like your grains and that kind of stuff, potatoes and other cooked foods. Those are more slower to digest, but especially if you're fruit dominant and you're eating this very uh, high absorption, fast digesting carbs, these simple sugars, then I don't really feel like intermittent fasting is going to be very helpful for you. At least that's, again, take that as you will, and I welcome anyone who has other thoughts on that matter. But it just seems like because it's moving so fast, there doesn't need to be a window to let your body sit and digest if you are leaning on physical food. And and this all changes if your body starts to shift into a more chronic living. If you're starting to lean towards eating less and less and you're actually able to sustain yourself. But again, be humble and honest with where that is. Be humble and honest about where you are within that, because that if if I intellectually attach myself to that idea, but my body is not ready for that, then I can introduce depletion. I can introduce problems with that. So it's something that we always have to be finding the balance within that space. But again, if we're consuming primarily fruit, I don't feel like intermittent fasting is as helpful. Now, if we are still consuming majority or a lot of denser fat-rich foods, like if we're consuming like a fatty meal towards the end of the day, that's a much slower digesting fuel. So if we're doing that, which no harm or shame in that, then I still feel that intermittent fasting can be very helpful because you're giving the body digestive rest to deal with that denser, slower digesting thing before you start to reintroduce food again. So that's sort of where I'm at with intermittent fasting. Again, a tool to use at the appropriate times, the appropriate way. It can be something that can lead to depletion if we're not careful, and it can also be something that's very helpful. If we're sharing with family and friends who are not on board with the frugivore way and simplifying their diet and cutting out processed foods and animal products and all of that, I think suggesting intermittent fasting is a phenomenal thing to do. I think that's an easy suggestion where somebody doesn't necessarily have to adopt these things that they might find too difficult to get on board with, but having a narrower eating window to process all of that stuff is great. So again, we just kind of have to cater it to whoever we're speaking with and wherever we are in whatever moment. So yeah, that's intermittent fasting. And then on extended fast, similar in that if we are consuming primarily fruit and we don't feel like our body has shifted into a higher state of chronic living, where we're able to tap into these other forms of energy, and you're the only one who can know that. And we do have to experiment and see where we are. And so there's nothing wrong with flexing either direction and seeing where we feel and how our body responds. But just be willing to adapt, be willing to change, be willing to shift if we start to notice ourselves becoming depleted, or if we've tried other things and we're not shifting in that way. It's like so if we're in that space of eating primarily fruit, low fat, then extended fasts are going to be challenging to do. I would say longer than 3 days. And that number is flexible as well. But keeping the extended fast to a shorter period of time makes more sense to me because you're not going to have as much of the fat reserves on your body. So you can run into issues with depletion much quicker. Now, again, we find ourselves in a state where we are consuming mostly fruit, all fruit, and we have done our body's conditioned to fasting, and we're able to sustain ourselves on less and less, then it's a whole different thing. You look at I always love checking in with Eli Martyr of the Free Melon Society. Great channel to follow. I love his perspective, and he's just a great example of what somebody who's really dedicated to this path of shifting to simpler and simpler forms of nourishment. And he's even talked about how he doesn't really share a lot of the things that he's doing as far as he's like, it's like kind of boring sharing what I eat in a day videos, because it might just be 2 cantaloupes for the whole day, or you know 10 apples for the whole day, or a bunch of bananas, and that's his entire day's physical food. And he's out there very physical, very active. He's a stunt man. He's always showing his workout routines and all this other kind of stuff. So he's like physically fit, very strong. He's lean, but he's very strong, and he also does extended fasting. So that's an example, not to intellectually attach myself to and say, oh, if I'm not like Eli, then I'm failing. I'm doing something wrong. But just to keep it open, to know that that's the possibility, and that's something that we are very much within ourselves to shift to. So if we were shifting in that direction, then yeah, we are able to go on extended fasting without depleting ourselves. But as the straight and narrow path is very narrow, it's very refining. So the number of people who reach those kind of levels in today's day and age are very few, very few. So we have to, again, be honest with where we are within that. So for the majority, if we've done the work of shifting to a high fruit, high carb, low fat way, you're already doing a phenomenal job at reconditioning your body to be utilizing a higher form of energy in the physical form. So leaning into extended fast might not be something that you need to do. I mean, granted, if there's a ailment or something that you're trying to cure, parasite cleanse, I mean, it's very effective in lots of those things, as we talked about with fasting with Trevor. So it's like, that's why it's so hard to give a specific response on, should I do this or should I do that? And I don't answer that question. If you ever notice, I don't really like when people ask me, should I do this or should I eat that or should I fast or any of that. I'm always going to bring it back to, well, I can't make that decision for you. You're going to be the one that knows where you are with it. I can share my experience where I've been in different stages to share what's been effective for me and how that's shifted over time and all of that. But it's challenging to, I can't know where anybody is. Of course, with more information, it becomes easier to sort of tailor and give more detailed suggestions. But in a general way, when I'm speaking in a more public sense, it's impossible. That's why, like, even this conversation, I'm having to just constantly go back and forth in all these different spectrums of like, oh, if you're here or if you're there and if you're that. And even with all that, it's take it as you will, and take it slow, and just be mindful, be conscious. Because I mean, one of the most important things we can do with this experience is to become present and conscious, to stop living unconsciously, where I'm just going from this to that in an unconscious way. I'm just walking through life based on some exterior influence. And even if that exterior influence is listening to me or listening to other voices, if I'm still acting in an unconscious way, then I'm missing the point. If I'm reading the Gospel of Thomas, or reading the words of these ascended masters, Yeshua, Krishna, if I'm just reading them, but I'm not actually consciously integrating them into my life, then they mean nothing. So this is the same with anything that we learn, anything that we find. I can take that and then consciously integrate it into my life, and then be willing to modify, to change, to shift, allow the flow to move through me, so that if I learn about this in regards to fasting and I come into an experience where like that really doesn't work for me, I'm not so stubborn where I feel like I have to blast through it or bring myself into harm out of pride, but I'm humble enough to shift. So yeah, I think that I think that about covers it in regards to fasting. So just to make sure, the extended fasting, I think if you're high carb, low fat, then restricting the extended window is probably ideal unless you're in a more chronic state and you're the only one that can be the judge of that. If you're consuming denser foods and you have higher fat reserves, then it's safer to go into an extended fast because your body already has physical backup systems in play that are going to mitigate or reduce the potential of you falling into a depleted state. So yeah, if somebody has more reserves, more fat reserves on them, then they can go into an extended fast um, without the potential for causing harm, though there still is. So again, take fasting as a very powerful tool to lean into, to utilize as needed. But it can also, it's like I often say, fire is a powerful tool as well. It's very useful, extremely useful. It's so helpful to do so many things, and it can be extremely devastating. You know, these I mentioned these initiations that people have to go through to go into these higher orders. Well, they would do this on purpose because, like Darth has talked about this, how some of these pyramids and these temples acted as these orgone enhancing rooms to accentuate, to magnify your own energy within you. Many of them were sensory deprivation chambers that you'd enter, and within the space, your own energy was amplified exponentially. And if your body was not attuned, if your body was not ready to handle these higher levels of magnified energy, you could die. So that was one of the reasons why they had initiations, to ensure that you've met the qualifications to enter into this space. Otherwise, it's extremely dangerous. Fasting is the same way. It's if we have not gone through our own initiation into certain levels, and you're going to be the only one that can truly know that, then trying to jump into an intense extended fast can be dangerous and even deadly. So it's the same sort of thing. We have to honor where we are. We have to honor, and that's okay. Like it's okay not to be everything all at once. It's okay. It's like that's what makes this a fun process, to have these varying degrees that we become initiated into. And we don't need some external organization to determine that, though. Yeah, I'm not knocking that, but I'm just saying for you to embody and recognize this process and the joy that we get from it, to have those opportunities to learn and grow and to go through experiences where, yeah, I might have pushed the limits a little bit, but I learned from it. I recognize the consequences, and fortunately, the consequences were not deadly. But even if they are deadly, it's like we're not bound to this body, so we don't have to be afraid of trying things. Just know that there are consequences that are deadly, and so if that happens, well, I'll try again next time, right? But I would much rather give the disclaimer so that people don't needlessly go into things that are potentially harmful without at least the full knowing of, or as much as one can impart in a conversation of how that can be misused and abused or harmful. So anyway, that's a lot of that's a long stream right there. I'll pause and yeah, I'll open up the other mics to people that are on, and I'll just give a pause and see if anybody wants to jump in, either on that topic, on your own healing journey, things that you've discovered, stuff where you might have jumped into something too much too fast, or things that you learned from along the way, or questions around what I just described. Or if nothing else on that topic, we can certainly jump into something else as well. So I'll just take a pause and see if anybody wants to.
Well, hello there, Justin. So good to hear. That was all those lots of topics there you discussed. Everything. Thank you for the update. Wonderful to hear that you're having what sounds like you've expressed very positive adventures and really great outcomes and various things that you've been going through. So thank you for sharing all that. So I was going to touch on the sugar. So it's only been for myself only like 10 days or so that I did take it on in a way um slowly. I'm not like I don't want to like uh I'm actually using maple syrup as well because sort of I had some that I had recently purchased, and I wanted to just kind of go through that. I did just buy some sugar yesterday, so I was wanting to try to get the best deal on it. Uh, counting uh, counting my purchases rather tightly lately. So anyways, yeah, I've just been using maple syrup at first. I haven't even opened the bag of sugar yet. But um, so I've been adding it to my fruit. Just having a cut up fruit, not necessarily too much blended fruit, but I have done I've been, I've always spoke about doing my blended lemons, full lemon, right? Peel and all. So but adding it to that. So making a sweetened lemonade, and it's absolutely delicious. Adding it to my mango, bananas, apples, oranges, whatever I was kind of eating just by hand before. Because I actually did take your advice quite a while ago, and I kind of stopped juicing just because my juicer was so shitty, and it was just so difficult, and it was so messy, and it was like the end result is absolutely delicious, but you know what? It's just too much. So I just started. You're suggesting, well, just eat it. You know, just eat it with your hands. Just eat it instead of making juice. So I have been doing that. Anyway, so just adding whatever to whatever I was eating, just in small amounts, like maybe a tablespoon per small bowl of fruit. So not a lot. Um, and what I did cut out was which was absolutely a staple in my diet, was my walnut dip that I've spoken on here. The walnut dip has ingredients of chickpea, black sesame, walnut, lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and a little splash of sesame oil, some apple cider vinegar, um, and also I was putting maple syrup in that before because it was giving that balance with because I put a lot of heat in there. I put a lot of cayenne peppers in there, fresh ones, and make it quite a really nice back heat to it. But then adding the maple syrup gives this really beautiful element as well. So so I stopped eating that. I actually ran out of a batch. I thought, well, let me test this and not even make any because like I eat this stuff on everything. I'll eat it with everything. Tomato, dip my cherry tomatoes in it, like celery, um, apples. Um, so it's and I put a scoop of it into my soups or whatnot, on salads, everything. I just on everything basically. So I can consume, I guess, a fair bit of those nut oils, if I'm really looking at the amounts per, I can maybe perhaps have quite a high fat content in that day. It's not consistently every day, but still consistently enough because it's a staple in my diet. So anyway, so I cut that out. And even though it's only been a short period of time, I can absolutely feel a difference. And surprisingly, I mean, there's a few other factors involved, but I think that my skin already feels better because but there is the factor of we're coming into humidity. The humidity's back with the season change. It's warmer. I'm swimming again, and I'm also I started to use a Vaseline on my skin as a moisturizer as opposed to just a cream, because I just was sort of, again, I money is tight. I can't just go out and buy specific things. So I was using up stuff that I had over the winter and stuff. So anyway, so my skin has changed drastically, actually, in what I feel for how I've been observing it. And I should say drastically in a short period of time. It's not like, oh, it's completely healed kind of a thing, drastic, but no, in a short period of time, I'm seeing a switch. Um, so and as well, then feel how my diet, sorry, my constitution feels really good. Um, I'm energy wise definitely feel an evenness. So depends on my scheduling and stuff like that, and be on these lives, whatever. And then if I'm having a really active day and I'm out with, you know, uh, very active physically, stuff like that. It really depends on sort of my appetite, but I really just feel it's sort of not as extreme, if you will. Like I feel like there's not this ravenous hunger. Um, and because I'm sipping consistently on the lemon water, or then, when in my eating window, that I'm eating the fruit with sugar on it, and I have, yeah, it's been over a week. I haven't actually even touched any nuts. Like I'm not even eating any, just just a small amount, without even making my dip. Um, so that's just, just want to kind of share. Like I said, I don't want to like go it's all this is sugar. Like I said, there's other factors that have completely switched up from about a month ago for myself in my day to day. So yeah, but I'm yeah, I'm really happy about it. So for myself, I've always been somebody who did like uh on probably the not so good side, consuming sugar, whereas I was, somebody who, like the more of the baked goods and pastries and things like that. So with all that stuff is what is really, I can see in my how my body reacts, and how, and I can look back and know that, yeah, absolutely, eating, oh, it's just a small pastry. It is a small little thing, but it's really what's in it, you know and the amount of fats, the amount of butters and oils and whatnot, and mixed with the egg and then the flour, all that, really, I mean, you just have to look at it, and after chewing something like that, spit it out and look at what it looks like. It's like this blob of goop, you know, that it just, yeah. And we look at, chewing an orange and what comes out after that, and just what the digestion would go through. So yeah, it just all makes a lot of sense for me. And yeah, I mean, and I'm really enjoying it. So it's not something like in the beginning, like over a year and a half ago. Well, it's actually not a year and a half, but when I started to do more restricting, calorie restricting, and then going into more like 90% raw, 10% cooked, was last March, March of 2024. So I've kind of, gone pretty consistent with that, up and down a little bit, ratios would change a little bit, but not too extremely. Um, and that was really tough at first, going through sort of a phase. And then as well, at the same time, I had doubled my go-go juice intake. So I was really feeling the effects of what felt like a lot of detox effects. So, and it's at times, as it's fluctuated, like I said, the ratios have fluctuated. It's been very interesting to monitor my body this past year. So that's a pretty good amount of time to see how my body's adjusted. It'll be like in July, it'll be like 2 years since I've consumed like shrimp. That was one of the last sort of animal products that I was consuming. Milk was before that. Milk was like maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 months before that. Yeah, maybe four, like 4 months before that period of time. And that was summer of 2023. So that's pretty that's a pretty good period of time. Like I'm shocked I could say those numbers, but I've been able to get a pretty good read on my body and how it's sort of reacted to this and that, these changes and whatnot. So enjoying this one. It's not sort of, I'm not feeling any adverse effects myself. Like I said, I haven't gone into the white sugar yet. Now I'm hoping I just wanted to go to my local, and I wasn't able to get to somewhere further where I was able to maybe get some options on organic and stuff like that. So, but I just, I purchased myself like just what was it? Was it two? Yeah, just 2 kilograms for now. So, and it's from Korea. It's a product of Korea. So I'm gonna look into more about it. I just brought it home, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't even opened it yet. So I'm gonna read into it and see if there's anything about it that I don't think there should be anything that would be negative per se. Uh anyway, but yeah, that's what I've got for the moment. And yeah, I'll update more as I go along. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, it's really cool, like just to have the opportunity to hear from others on different things that we experiment with, and then we can share and compare notes. And it's, not that everything that works for Tracy is going to work for Justin or whatever, but like to have more of that information just gives us more ideas to try with. And I that walnut dip you mentioned, it sounds amazing. But yeah, as far as like just seeing what shifting to less fat in the diet feels like, it makes sense. I mean, I know when I eat a heavy fat meal, like I make even if it's raw, like if I eat like a few avocados or make like a giant salad with like a big fatty dressing that has like nuts or whatever in it, um, I definitely feel like a shift in energy after the meal. And the next day, it takes it takes it takes a good little bit before I feel like my system is sort of clear and ready to receive new food. So that's why I mentioned that intermittent fasting can be helpful, just to give yourself a break. So because if we start piling fruit, especially watermelon or melons are the worst, or not worst, but they're the fastest digesting. So I've definitely gotten into a couple scenarios where I've eaten watermelon even the next day after I've eaten a heavy fatty meal at the end of the day, and it will ferment in my gut, and I'll start like burping and get like kind of heartburn, and it doesn't feel good at all. So yeah, so that's why I said intermittent fasting can be helpful to just make sure whatever needs to digest is out of the system before we start adding things like fast digesting fruit. So yeah, it's interesting to note. And if you want, I, I've never, I mean, I've gone on this site, but I haven't used it extensively. There's a site called Chronometer, and it's just like a free way to track your what sort of what they call it, like track your macros. I mean, it goes into detail on what all is in the food as well. So it can be helpful. I've heard it's not always 100% accurate as far as like how it logs things, but it's just a simple way to say, okay, I ate like one cup of walnuts or however many grams if you weigh it, or you can estimate it if you just want to ballpark it, but you can input that, and it will tell you based on if you do your whole day's worth of food, it will tell you your number of grams of fat, protein, and sugar. And so people who are more strict on following the like Doug Graham's 80-10-10, or some people like Freely mentioned she likes to keep hers 5% or less, so 5% fat or less. So some people will do 95-5, so 90% carbs, 5% fats, 5% protein. So it'll tell you, how much you're eating in that particular day. So it's kind of helpful to do that at first, just to get an idea if you want to keep it under that threshold of 10%, 5%. And yeah, so that's what a lot of people use. So if you're curious on that, might be a helpful way just to see how much, if you just had like a small amount of that walnut dip, if that would bump you up over that 5% threshold. Because fats are so concentrated, and as I mentioned, they're like good for emergencies. So a nut has a crazy amount of calories in it compared to like fruit that's going to have more water and lots of other things. So on a calorie perspective, it's got a lot more to it, but it's just slower burning and it's harder to digest. So the only reason I say that is because it's, eating a handful of nuts is very different than eating a handful of blueberries as far as the percentage of um, calories that we're going to get from that particular source. So anyway, I hope my connection's still coming through. If my connection starts to drop, because I know there are some parts on this route that it starts to fade, please let me know. I don't really want to just talk to dead air or talk to, if it's not coming through. So let me know if I start to fade at all. And that'll probably determine like how long we go today. So yeah, but
Going
anyway,
good
thanks.
so far.
Great. Thanks, Lila. But yeah, thanks Tracy for sharing that. And yeah, just little various things. And that's what another point mentioned on that show was that because when you mix sugar with water or lemonade or fruit water or whatever, having that sweetness in it, it helps to it gives more time for our body it becomes a slower moving liquid, and our body's more attracted to it because it's looking for the sugars, and so then it starts to absorb some of that water too. So that's why a lot of people experience boost in skin health, is because they're getting more hydration from using it. So it's just another benefit to add to it. So yeah, I've been doing the same thing, just loving lemonade and limeade and delicious things, just adding a spoonful of sugar, which I was joking with a smaller group the other night about how Mary Poppins instantly pops into mind with the spoonful of sugar. But yeah, that conversation was actually about potentially adding sugar to orange, which I haven't done yet, but that might be something, somebody wants to experiment and see how that feels. Somebody was saying that they enjoyed that. So just another thing to throw in the mix as we try all these wacky experiments on ourselves. So yeah, I'll just pause again and see if anybody else wants to jump in.
Hey, Justin and group. Would somebody else want to speak there? Okay. Anyway, this is Cheryl. Hi. Hi, everyone. I've been experimenting for the last 11 months, and I've been doing Purium. It's a well-researched company with his liquid food, but I have dropped a lot of weight. And with Justin's call, just to be humble where I am, I'm feeling great. My face looks fine. My body's very thin. So I'm like at the point where I'm thinking maybe it's time to start adding some food back in. I've had wonderful results. I actually have black hair coming in where my hair is all white. So now it's in reversal. Instead of white hair coming in, I actually have black strands coming in. And I do a detox drink every morning and night that actually pushes a lot of mucoid plaque through. So it's been amazing in that respect. It's just that, and I really wanted to keep going because I could feel my consciousness grow. I'm just getting stronger emotionally. I am actually on here speaking. The whole process has been, I contribute somewhat to the fasting and this whole process, the frequency raising, everything has been wonderful for me, and all the challenges that emotionally I look at now as, a journey, an adventure. It's been wonderful. And I thank this group for everything everyone shares all the time, because I'm always listening, and for Justin leading us. But I love that Justin said it's the age of responsibility. So I just have to humbly look at where I am and figure it out, and just go within and see where I'm led. But the Purium has been wonderful for me. And also wanted to let everybody know that we have a new Pope, Pope Leo 84. It's where we go one, we go all if you don't do the one. Precipice, mindset in the air, 5-5, midnight, fake news. Can't read my writing. Oh, wow. Abundance. It's real. Love day. Anyway, thanks all for listening.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks so much for sharing, and it's so good to hear you in this space. Yeah, I love the strength and stepping forward and speaking up. And I know you have done a little bit in recent weeks, but it's just wonderful to hear from you. And thanks for sharing about Pope Leo. So Leo, the lion raising up. That's probably no. I mean, I doubt that's any accident. And yeah, so thanks for reading the gematria too. And yeah, so thanks for that, and for sharing your testimony on the Purium stuff. So I've seen a lot of people referencing, and I know you've had great results with it, and I've seen a lot of people referencing it as well in different spaces. So it seems like a really good way to have a very simple nutrition. One thing that I might do if I were in your situation, I don't know if you've gone in to get like any blood work done, like get a blood test, but that's something that I used to be much more against, but I've since changed. I haven't gotten it myself, but I've since changed my thoughts around that, because I do think it can be very helpful insight into if we are becoming depleted in certain areas or not, and based on how you feel is obviously a fantastic indicator. And if you're feeling strong and vibrant and energized, if you like maybe do like some calisthenic exercises, and just like I know that's something that Casey Vegetable Police does, and he logs like how many push-ups and whatever he could do. And so he'll notice based on changes within his diet, like if he sees an increase or a decrease and all of that. So that might be a way to just kind of hedge your strength and see where you are within that, just doing some gentle exercise in that way. But the reason I mentioned the blood work is because one thing that seems to be fairly consistent, and Josh X has been pretty adamant about this, and a lot of other people do, is it doesn't seem like everyone has this issue, but there are many, because all the processed foods were fortified and all the animal products were fortified, that B12 can be something that we can find ourselves in a depleted state if we're not careful. And I don't know, maybe the Purium is supplemented in that way. It would make sense if they do, but that would be something that a blood test could determine, because that's one that can be tricky when we start to get depleted. If we find ourselves in a depleted state, it can be challenging to restore. And I do think that might have been a contributing factor to why I lost so much strength and weight so quickly back when I first started doing this. I don't know. I didn't get a blood test done. I kind of wish I had, but it is something that I'm considering doing soon, just to get a benchmark of where my levels are and see if there's anything that I'd like to tweak. That is that's really the only supplement that I will take. Well, That's not the only one. So as far as supplements goes, I enjoy using sea moss. If you consider that a supplement or not, I mean, it's a whole food, but I consider it supplemental for its mineral boost. But then I will also take a B12 sublingual supplement occasionally. It's not like something I do every day. I always have a little dropper bottle with me, and whenever I think about it, I'd say it's on average about 2 to 3 times a week. I'll put a drop under my tongue, or squirt a dropper full under my tongue, and that just seems to be like, I don't think that we need that forever, and like I said, not everyone seems to have that. Some people can sort of kickstart their body into producing it because we don't need external supplementation with anything. But again, we have to be honest with where we are, and is my body in that state where it is doing that? And so that's one thing that yeah, would be helpful with getting a blood test done, see where your levels are with that, and everything else. And if your blood work came back where you were balanced in all your levels, then it would just be a decision on like, if you were comfortable with the weight and or you wanted to stay within that. But at least you would know that you're not becoming depleted in those areas. So that'd be something that I'd look into. It is kind of it's a pain in the US to do that kind of stuff, because it's like you often have to get referred by a doctor in order to even have that kind of lab work done. It's so stupid to me. Like, why can't I just pay for that service and then they send me the information? But of course, it's all part of the big scam and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, if you do have like a way to do that, I've thought about calling various clinics and just saying like, hey, what would that cost me of someone who doesn't have insurance or any of that kind of stuff, just to come in and get blood work done? And I don't really want to listen to your spiels about it. I just want the information. Seeing if I can find some way to do that. But yeah, that was the only thing that popped out. But as far as like you seeing your hair change color, like, that's amazing. That's incredible. I actually saw, because I know that you got into the Purium stuff from Chris Manley, and I saw his post about that, but I didn't know it was you. That he had someone he's working with that's having their hair color change from white to black. And so that only happens when your body's in kind of like a homeostasis. It's not going to prioritize doing something like that unless it's feeling balanced and ready. If it were having to fight fires and do all sorts of other things, that would be a priority for it to do, from my perspective. So I'd say that's a really good sign that you're doing things the way that your body wants. And but again, like, if you find yourself wanting to shift things in a different way, or however, like, there's definitely things to tweak. And yeah, so I just appreciate you sharing and being that, like, you're hardcore. You've been going at it for quite some time, almost a year now, I think, where you've been on mostly, if not all, liquids, which is incredible. So thank you for sharing it and continuing to just help us to learn through you and your experience. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, it was 11 months on all liquids, which Pure products really make it really easy, I think. But, I had been doing the fruits and the watermelon juice, and a lot of just watermelon juice and just a lot of orange juice. So, I kind of prepared my body. But I have noticed lately that my magnesium level has been getting a little cramped here and there. So I love the suggestion about getting the blood work. And I do have a holistic doc who's like so on track with everything. Like, I can say anything and he's like, he doesn't even blink an eye. He's heard it all. So yeah, I can just send him an email and get some blood work done. But I know when I was in Florida, there are, and I'll see if I can locate it. I didn't want to use insurance to have some work done. And there was a company you could go through. you had to go to a special location to have your blood work done. And us, yeah, I can't recall everything now. It was 8 years ago. But thanks for all the tips. I love them. And yeah, and if another thing you touched upon is I just sold gold, but gold jewelry. And if you go to those jewelry stores that buy gold, you get a good price for a little bit of gold right now. So I was really happy with that. I didn't have to sell my silver. I sold some jewelry that was attached to other feelings, so I was happy to get rid of it and make some money. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion there with the jewelry, if you have some of that. And yeah, that's another reason why gold was a great idea, is because we've seen, I mean, silver's gone up a little bit, but gold's definitely gone up uh, a good bit more in price. So this is a, yeah, yeah, if you have it and it needs some, that would be a good thing to do. So thanks for that suggestion there. I don't have any gold jewelry myself, but that's a good suggestion. So appreciate that. So yeah, I'll just pass back and see if yeah, anyone wants to hop in on any topic we've talked about, your health journey, discoveries, experimentations, or take us in any direction that you like.
I probably should add that since we had that show, I have been experimenting with the organic white sugar, and I just poured into everything because I'm like, maybe this will help gain some weight anyway, or plump those cells up. Anyway, haven't noticed anything yet, but it's not adverse, no adverse effects. So thanks for that show. I really appreciate it. I really had my doubts, but she had some really um, logical and well researched evidence. So I said, oh, well, I'm one of those guinea pigs. I'll give it a try. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really good to know. You being in that state, you're going to be extremely sensitive to anything. So if you're not feeling any adverse effects, then that's a huge sign right there. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's cool to get into. Appreciate that. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. So on my trip, and I see that Paisley's on here, which no pressure to speak, Paisley, but I wanted to share something with you that I know you'll be excited, and I know there's several others who will love this as well. But if you haven't read or listened to the Ringing Cedar of Russia series, I can't recommend that series enough. It's like, from my perspective, it's like a modern day Bible, like the very short version of the story. And it's a 10-book series, so there's a lot to it, but it has the account of this guy, Vladimir, who goes into the deep into the jungle, or deep into the dense forest of Siberia, and meets this woman, Anastasia. And she's like, it's very easy to see that she's like a very Christed being. And so the whole, all 10 of the series, 10 books, is just her teaching him how to live in alignment with nature, in alignment with this creation, how to step away from society and the ways that the cities condition us and all of that. And they end up like falling in love and having children together. And so there's like about raising children and all that kind of stuff. And everything in it is phenomenal wisdom. Like, it's really good stuff. And so when I discovered that series a couple years ago, I think Paisley had recommended it, and a couple other people in the community had as well, because it's like everything we talk about. There's nothing that yeah, it flows very well with the Christed message. And so so anyway, it's a great series, and yeah, Paisley has done a great job at transcribing, or not transcribing, but doing an audiobook of, I think, the first two on her channel, which yes, No, where is it? That's gonna be hard to find while I'm driving. Forgive me, Paisley. I can't remember what your channel name is. It's kind of long. Um, but yeah, her channel, if you can find it or remember what it is, or if anyone else knows it and can shout it out, that would be helpful. But she's got the first two books on there that she's read, and so you can listen to them that way. There's also PDFs that you can find online. If anyone needs a link to those, I got a great link that's got all the updated PDFs to read. But what I wanted to announce is recently I got reconnected with Remembrancer, beautiful man, who y'all might a lot of you might remember from the series Mankind's Quest for True Health, and he was on a couple other shows that we've done before, and great guy. But I kind of lost contact with him, just for no reason. But hadn't spoken to him in a couple of years, and I reached out to him, just was like, "Hey, man, I was thinking about you the other day, and just wanted to touch base." And it was a great reconnection. We had a wonderful conversation, and he said, "Yeah, in a couple of days, I'm going to be joining a call, which happens every new moon, with the Ringing Cedar of Russia group, they called the Anastasia Foundation." And yeah, and he was like, "You're welcome to join that. It's open to anyone." And so I hopped onto it, and it was a wonderful discussion. And it was started in the US, but it's very international. So there were people from all over the world who joined it. And it's all about just embodying the teachings from that series and really putting them into practice and establishing networks for people to communicate so they can start. So what they call communities from that perspective are kins domains, which is a little bit different than what people think of as far as like community spaces. They are communities, but it's very centered around families. So it's like groups of families that choose to live around each other, but everyone's got their own space, which I like that model a lot more. Yeah, it's very fitting. So anyway, the guy who's the director of this foundation, the Anastasia Foundation, Gabriel Miguel, beautiful guy. He's about 30 years old. He's been doing this for 10 years now. As soon as he read the books, he was like convinced this was what he was supposed to spend his time doing. And so he's been working tirelessly, like pouring in so much of his own finances and time into getting this framework established to where other people who love this series can find others who want to start communities and find, potential partners and things of that nature, all aligned with these teachings. And it's been something that, so the series was written in Russia, and it started in Russia, and it's got a pretty big following in Russia. I don't know the numbers, but it's certainly, I would say it's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, very much aligned with this, and it could even be in the millions. But as far as spreading elsewhere outside of Russia, it's sort of taken a little bit of time. I think they were written in the 90s, I believe, 80s and 90s, maybe early 2000s. But yeah, so it's just spreading elsewhere. And I had the opportunity after joining that call, I let Gabriel know that I was going to be, because he lives in Asheville, North Carolina, which is only about an hour. Yeah, only about an hour away from my parents' cabin in North Carolina. And so I let him know I was going to be in the area, and he said, "Yeah, come on in, and we'll grab tea together and chat." And it was such an amazing conversation for both of us. I mean, we really had a wonderful time connecting, and he's just a very humble, good man. And he's like, I was impressed because he's very well studied in things like Kriya. Like he's a Kriya monk. He said so. He's gone through that thing, but he said there's still like some things where it feels like the Anastasia books really take it to a whole nother level as far as just like practicality and really integrating and bringing this like beauty into Earth instead of always viewing, and that's a whole topic, but just viewing like meditation as this escape to get out of this reality. Whereas really the Christed message is that meditation would be something that allows you to step further into this experience, to become more present with it, not something to escape from. So he just really enjoyed that layer. And so anyway, just a lot of really great conversations. We talked for hours and hours, just him and I. And so he said he's going to be busy for the next couple of weeks, but sometime, hopefully towards the end of May, we're going to do a podcast together. So I'm going to have him on, and we'll interview him and just kind of introduce the series and his involvement with starting this foundation and getting things going, and where they are with getting these books. There's been a lot of resistance within, as often happens when there's a pure message. There's a lot of resistance from society that's designed to stifle any of these messages from coming out. So if you actually look for the physical copies of the book, they can be quite expensive at times, because printing and publishing them has had all sorts of headaches, and issues with translations and all sorts of things. So they have some of the books for sale on their site to try and keep the cost as low as possible. But he's working to hopefully get all that established to where they will own the rights to the English translation and can publish and distribute them in a much more affordable way. So he's working on lots of great things within that. But just a very, very kind man. I can tell that we'll be friends, and so just really looking forward to that conversation when it does, because that's what I told him. I was like, this whole community, you guys are everyone's on board with everything that they talk about. So it's just it was very encouraging to me to see a whole group of people that are aligned with everything that we talk about. Politically, it's not, but they just kind of like don't really get into the politics that much. But there are some people who very much see what's happening in the geopolitical space, but their focus is about how can we center ourselves back to connecting with the earth and establishing families and communities that are oriented around that. And here's how it looks and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to sort of let everyone know that, especially those who have read that series before, and let you know that there is a great resource to look into of a community of people that are already very much aligned with that. You can find, I think it's, I want to say the website is like Anastasia.foundation, I think is what it's called. I could be wrong on that, but you can just likely search for the Anastasia Foundation on a search engine, and it'll pop up, and you can find other resources. There's like there's several Telegram groups that they have. And yeah, it's just cool talking with people who are getting this. And we were pretty excited talking about this database that he's working on to have an easy way to find other kids domains that are either in the works or that have already been established. Because even in Russia, where there are hundreds of communities, if not more, there is a database, but it's very poorly organized. It's very hard to find. So if you were trying to find where people were, it's very challenging. So he's a web developer. So it's like perfect divine alignment for him to be involved with this. So he's making this really, really slick looking website that's going to have the database of where these different communities are already established and where they're being worked on, and we'll have like main contact points of people within that particular community, so people can get in touch with them and see pictures and updates, and it'll be so engaging and attractive that everyone's going to want to share what they're up to. And so it'll just create this really exciting network for people to get involved with other spaces or find people near them or whatever. And he's hoping to have that done sometime this year, and hopefully pretty soon. But it's all really exciting stuff. And so I just wanted to let everyone know that as well. And so stay tuned for that announcements, which will share a lot more about details in regards to that. But there's already a ton that you can go find out if you want to go look on their website and all the things within that. So just wanted to mention that as well. And yeah, if you haven't read the series, it's phenomenal. You can find there's a so Paisley I think has done the first two, maybe she's done more at this point, but there's also a I like Paisley's better, but there is an amateur audiobook reading on YouTube that she's done 10, so you can listen to all of them in that space as well. And then, as I mentioned, the PDFs you can find. I'll share a link to what Gabriel sent me, where he's got the whole series compiled in PDF, or the most updated, best versions of the translations and everything. And he's even got a service. It's not his service, but he recommends this like PDF printing service that you can actually submit the PDFs to them and they'll print off the books. And he said it usually costs around like $30 per book, so not too bad to get it printed out that way if you prefer physical copy. So yeah, that's another thing I wanted to mention and something that's in the works and I'm excited about. So just wanted to pass that on. But I will pass it off and see if anyone wants to jump in.
Paisley does a wonderful job orating. I don't know if that's Paisley coming in, but her channel is called Giving Voice to the Eternal Truth of Divinity. So thank you, Paisley. I've been enjoying.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hi, Justin. Long time no talk. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Unfortunately, I'd had to take a hiatus from narrating, but I miss it. So I do intend to get back and into that. Yeah, that's really beautiful hearing about Gabriel. His website is definitely gorgeous. It is absolutely. And he also has a YouTube channel, I think. Yeah, Anastasia Foundation, Ringing Cedars of Russia. And another group that he likes to hang out with and chat with a lot is Alpha Vedic. And I'm pretty sure they have a Telegram channel as well. So just to back up what you were saying.
Yeah, thanks, Paisley. Good to hear from you. And yeah, no pressure on your channel and everything. I mean, that's the great thing about starting a channel and putting stuff on there. It's there forever, whenever. Well, as long as the servers are going or whatever. But it doesn't require any added effort to keep it going. So it's just that they're there as just a great way to tune into and listen to. And yeah, so I just really appreciate all your efforts and no worries on taking time off or away or even shifting and doing something completely different. But I knew I knew that series was near dear to you, and yeah, it was really cool to connect with them. So I'm excited about this conversation coming up. And yeah, thanks on the other the YouTube channel. Yeah, there's some good stuff on that channel. And then yeah, he had mentioned that other one that you just mentioned, but I'd forgotten about it. But will you say that name one more time?
Yeah, it's Alpha Vedic. And it's got some wonderful fellows that join him on there. And I've watched quite a few of them. So yeah. Did you get that?
Yeah, got that. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Lovely to speak with you.
Yeah, always. Cool. Well, yeah, anyone else or anybody want to jump in, share anything, give any updates, anything going on, questions? We don't have to keep this going, but I'm sitting here driving, so I'm happy to stay on if anyone's got anything.
Is this being recorded? Because I missed the beginning hour or so.
Yeah, I've got the recording on. I'll post it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Hey, brother, loud and clear.
Hey brother, I just wanted to wish you safe travels and to say hi. I've kind of went on a little hiatus myself. I haven't really been on Telegram or social media too much the past few weeks, really. Just trying to get back into the swing of things and just kind of been observing things from a distance for a little bit until I get my footing and just reestablish that signal or frequency. I got pulled out of it quite a bit, so it's been a challenge to just get back to feeling like the way that I felt before. It's hard getting back to that. So not that I want to get back to the exact place that I was before, and stay stagnant. Definitely want to keep moving. It's just finding my place in it all now is it's challenging. I'm trying to put it all together and see where I fit back in it all, and what I have to offer. So yeah, I'm searching for something meaningful to do and be a part of and have some forward progress. Loving everything that you're doing, Justin. Definitely interesting, the sugar stuff. It kind of threw me for a loop when it was first talked about, but yeah, definitely. It makes sense to me, when you refine it down, it doesn't it doesn't all of a sudden become bad. If it was good at that point, and you're stripping away things, at its essence, it still was good to begin with. So yeah, it makes sense with me, and I'm sure there's better sugars than others, depending on what brand and what kind of sugar you're getting. But yeah, just thought I'd give my input on that, and just kind of sitting back and watching what's going on with the Pope and how this all fits in with the movie, the first American Pope. I've been doing some research into that whole thing with Unum Sanctum and 1302, drawing a connection to when Unum Sanctum was that basically declaration that the Vatican and the Pope owned everything on Earth, including the Earth, I guess. And then there was a kind of, I guess, a power struggle between them and the king. And 1302 is pretty close to 1307 when we think about the Knights Templar and the massacre on Friday the 13th in 1307. So it's very fascinating to me that those two events are within 5 years of each other. And now we see the Vatican and the Pope front and center with all of this. And so yeah, I'm just watching and taking it all in and just processing it and just being cool about everything. Try not to let anything out there rock my boat anymore. And not even really truly have too much of an opinion on things with as much as things shift around and aren't necessarily what we think they are at first. And so yeah, I'm just in that observation space with myself and the out there world to try to figure things out. It's slow moving, and I'm putting a little bit of pressure on myself, trying not to do that, pressure myself into doing something that isn't as meaningful as I would hope for it to be, in the rush to just do something to do something. So yeah, I know I'm kind of all over the place talking about myself and the Vatican, but trying to get used to the public speaking again as well. Taking that time off, it definitely pulled me out of my rhythm. But yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say hi, and I didn't know if anybody else had any takes on what's going on with the Pope, and yeah, talk about that, or yeah. But yeah, just ultimately just wanted to jump in and say hi to everyone. I miss you all, and I know I've been distant and haven't really been around the past 2 months, but the past year. But yeah, just hi everyone. I love you, and I'm glad to be here with you all.
It's so good to hear from you, brother. And seriously, no worries. I like the you talking about the finding things meaningful. the way that you are giving and being with your beautiful children, that is bar none the most meaningful thing that you can do, not only for them and you, but for this whole experience. I mean, the ripple effect of giving to a child and what that does to the collective consciousness, just the layers of energy that that gives off, the vibrations. I mean, that's powerful. It's so powerful. So don't discount that, you know, and I know you don't, but I just want to remind you so that in those moments where you find disappointment or not doing this or that, just remember you are doing something that's so miraculous, so powerful, and healing for this whole experience. So just wanted to mention that. And yeah, no worries at all on the time or any of that. I think that's very wise for you to share it in that way, that you're not trying to just rush into something because you know your mind has convinced you that you need to be doing something. That's but you're like honoring the flow, and sometimes the flow moves us to a space of rest and a space of recalibrating and a space of you know, taking a pause and just being in observation. And it reminded me of one thing I learned in the Vipassana meditation experience that I had, the 10-day silent retreat, just going into that state of Dhamma, which is non-intervention, unswayed by what's happening and not attached to what's going on around. And so if we're always in that state of doing, which there's nothing wrong with being in a state of doing, but if we're always there and we don't take that moment to pause and observe and just be with it, then that's where we can get pulled into looping patterns of getting sucked into this way or that way, which is how society was structured to always keep us doing. And then we feel bad. We're conditioned to cast these black spells on ourselves if we're not doing something. The whole hustle and grind culture that's beaten into us. And so that takes away from our ability to just take a step back and reflect and be comfortable with not knowing exactly what to do. And maybe that's exactly what we need to be doing is the reflecting, is the just being with the moment. So I think I think the work that you're doing is incredible. So I just wanted to add that to you so that in those moments, like as I mentioned, where if you find yourself in disappointment or discouraged or feel like you're not doing enough, just know that you are. Like you're exactly where you need to be. You're in the most perfect, right place. And your example is helpful not only to me, but I'm sure to anyone listening. So just appreciate you and thanks for sharing that. And yeah, just wanted to offer that.
Thank you very much for the kind words, brother. And you're absolutely right. Those beautiful little angels are truly the most important work. And I hate to even say work because I don't really consider it that, but the meaningful, right? I guess that's the proper word. The most meaningful thing is just making sure they're good and yeah, I'm setting creating those ripple effects for that'll last throughout the future, and just do right by them and put the focus on them that I should. I spent so much time out there looking at the out there world and being hyper vigilant and down every conspiracy rabbit hole I could go down. It pulled me away from them for all those years because I was the protector, and instead of the loving, nurturing father that was present. My mind was always scanning for that next threat that was coming from them. And I finally let go of all that, all of the fear, and just trying to be present in the moment with them and take them off that back burner, you know, again, I mean, it was a valid reason for all those years to, you know, be looking out there and trying to keep them safe. But, you know, in the end now, you know, it was, you know, a bunch of fear that was misplaced. And I found my way through it all. Yeah, there's a lot of dangerous stuff out there. But I've also learned to surrender through it all. You know, and have to trust God. And like you said, know that you're in that right and present place in every moment. And, you know, I'm back with them, and being reunited with them has been fantastic. I miss them so much. And, you know, I'm still going through a lot with them. I mean, you know, my ex is still jabbing them up, you know, left and right. Molly just came home with two more needle holes in her legs. And, you know, it just kills me. You know, she was sitting there crying to me, saying that she wanted them out. You know, she wanted the shots out, you know, crying, and like, the worst feeling in the world, that I, you know, couldn't do anything to help her with that. You know, I'm going to work on just detoxing them the best I can. I'm getting really fed up with the medical world and the insanity of it all. But there's really nothing I could even do right now. In Ohio, she has all the power when it comes to that stuff. So another thing I had to surrender to, and just keep working on detoxing them the best I can and try to get them eating right. It's scary stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I know we've been told that all the vaccines are saline. But you know, it's still a pretty awful feeling knowing that they're holding your child down, lying to her, bribing her in order to let them, you know, penetrate her body with a witch's brew of toxins, you know. And you know, it's a lot to handle, you know. It really is. And I'm handling it better than I thought I would. But yeah, I mean, that's a whole conversation that could be had right there, but I won't dive too deeply in it. But because it was my biggest fear for a long time was the vaccines, and I kept them safe from them for so long. And you know, Charlie, he told me they was going to take him and put the earplugs in, or the tubes in his ears, and you know, he comes home and he's had his adenoids removed. You know, so it's like, you know, but yeah, I'm getting through it all, and taking it in stride, and everything will work out. I trust God. I trust the process, and I'm just gonna keep moving. And thank you again, everyone, for all the support that you've given me over these years and being there for me and checking on me. It means so much to me. I'm truly indebted to you all, and just thank you again. Love you all.
Yeah, certainly no debt. It's giving to you what I know you give so freely to others. So that's the wonderful representation of creation. So if anything, just continue to pay it forward, as I know you do. And yeah, I mean, the topic with your children and the vaccine stuff, like, oh man, thank you for sharing it. Wow, that would be very challenging. I mean, just to reflect on that, like not to add to the challenge, but just to relate with the challenge of going through that, of that divine masculine as the father, like to have to let go of that instinctual desire to protect against something that you know. Yeah, that's got to be extremely challenging. And I also hear the wisdom and the layers that are being added to you to be able to step into that and to speak on this with the measure that you are. So the divine is finding and weaving that beautiful thread through you, through these experiences. And as hard as they are, it's still bringing everyone, them, you, and everyone involved to a greater band, to a higher realm that could not have been without going through this experience. So yeah, having that to lean on, and again, just staying in that space of trust and faith that God ultimately protects through it all. I know if it were me, I would place my hands on those spots, especially when she's troubled by them, and and heal them. The more that we can, there's no limit to what we can do and how powerful we are. It's just our beliefs. So the ways that Jesus was able to heal just through simple touch, you have that. And so to find that way to shift and to transmute and alchemize any potential harm that might be caused from that. Verifiable proof or evidence to see that, but just trust that it will. And of course, doing the things like you mentioned to detox, and I mean, all of that's just bringing her to a greater state of health anyway. But that would be something that I might do if I were experiencing that too. Is just placing my hands there and letting her know that it's going to be okay, and yeah, just alleviating the fear as much as possible, both within yourself and within her. But again, just thank you for sharing. And I know there are others who have gone through similar experiences as that, and yeah, I know it helps to share. So thank you.
I'd like to interject just really quickly, Mike. So lovely to hear your voice, brother. Miss you so much and love you so dearly, and all that you've been through and going through with your babies. Sound therapy, big time, for sure, for all of you, her, your children, you, yeah, and it's free. it's all over the place to find, the beats, the binaural beats, and all of that. I know you know that, so. And I sent you a private message, no pressure, just whenever you feel that you want to go on Telegram and have a look-see. Okay, big hugs.
Hey Paisley, yeah, I love you too, sister, and yeah, I'll get on checking that message, and yeah, I know that the sound therapy and the Therify is really what I would love to go do. I'm on house arrest right now, so I can't leave the house but for a couple hours a week. But I should be off. They gave me 11 months probation and home confinement. I'm already through 2 of it. I'm doing everything that they want me to do, so I might be able to get off with probation about halfway if I file a motion, if I get everything paid and taken care of. So yeah, I'd be able to take her to one of those locations that they have that Therify technology and or sound therapy, whatever. I'm into all of that, the sound baths and you name it. I know how powerful the frequency and vibrations and resonance is. So yeah, I'll definitely do that. And good to hear your voice, sister. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thanks for
Justin,
that. Go ahead, Mike.
yeah, I was just gonna you made it pop in my mind when you brought up the putting the hands on and healing. And I read a really, really, really fascinating book called The Intention Manual. when I was in, or the intention experiment. And I think it was Lisa McTaggart was the author. But if anybody hasn't heard of that or checked it out, man, it's some powerful stuff that goes into really a lot of different things. But the author researched distance healing basically, and poured through all the different studies of prayer and healing at a distance. And I think it's very compelling stuff that shows that, yeah, we absolutely, they don't even have to put the hands on. It'll work, from anywhere. I believe that Reiki works 100%. I had some really, really bad infections in jail, like one of them that, probably almost killed me. Like it was like I had like gangrene coming out of the top of my head, and I was so stubborn I wouldn't put in a sick call slip and see the doctor there. And Marlena was doing Reiki on me like every night, and that mixed in with a little bit of urine therapy, just taking a couple little drops and pouring it on over the wound, actually healed it. Like it's unbelievable how it happened. So it opened my eyes big time, both reading that book and experiencing the healing from a distance that she did on me, because I have no doubt, I would have ended up in the hospital probably without what she did. I mean, it was it was one of the gnarliest wounds I've ever had. I mean, I still don't even know what it was. Some kind of staph infection or MRSA. But I got multiple infections in there, and she was always there to do Reiki on me and heal me up good, and really took care of me when I was in there. So thank you to her. I know she's here. I don't know if she's still in the room. I know she had an appointment. But yeah, she was amazing through it all. I don't know if I would have made it through it all without her. But really powerful stuff there when it comes to healing and intention. So yeah, that book again, it was I think it's Lisa McTaggart, The Intention Experiment. And I'll just leave it there.
I just want to chime in and just clarify that's Lynn McTaggart. She's done The Power of Eight. I joined that group for a while, and that is a very powerful book. So I'm so grateful that you tapped into that, brother. Love you.
I shared the link on in JC Family, so it's there for everybody.
Thanks, Lila. Thanks, Macy, for the clarification. And yeah, it's that's powerful stuff for sure. But what you could do, Mike, is yeah, because I mean, the like going to a facility where they do sound healing, of course, would be wonderful. But leaning into some of the free stuff that you can just find, and just getting a nice set of headphones or nice speakers, and just sitting her down and playing those frequencies, and then doing the touch healing or energetic healing during that, and just sort of imagining, but really channeling and moving that energy that she's already hearing into her body. And of course, like she's really the one that's bringing it on and allowing it. But by you setting that intention, you're opening her up for it, and she trusts you. And so it could really create like a really beautiful thing to open her up to those ways, and see what happens. Like it certainly can't hurt. And I think it would be really powerful to go through and just have that. So that could be something you could do without going anywhere or any cost or anything. Just taking a few moments and say, hey, let's go do some sound healing, and getting her excited about that, and getting her, then that will help to take away the fear and all of that too. So yeah, just some thoughts on that. But really appreciate everyone sharing this.
Absolutely, brother. I'll definitely get on that and utilize all of that. Thank you all.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about that. Hi, everybody. And I just was thinking, yeah, for myself too, like this vigilance. It's such this interesting conundrum of like being informed, especially as an investigator in human design, and then a parent, and you want to care for your children the best you can, and especially for those of us that went through the vaccinations and other, just the way things were. um it's like we want to do for our children in a wiser way, and then also how that can be motivated by fear, and how challenging it can be to walk the narrow path of like, okay, how am I wise and informed and vigilant, but then also how do I not dip into that fear, anger, those kinds of things right around it. Not that anger and these things sometimes aren't great motivators, because they can be, but we just don't want to stay living in that chronically, and teaching that to our children. And it's definitely something that I struggle with too as a parent. And so, I'm glad that you brought that up, and also just this energy of, how Jesus healed, which we all have that ability, which is to come into our Christed selves and use our hands and our bodies and our spirit. We don't even necessarily have to use our hands, right? To soothe the fear and soothe the perceived trauma, for your children and for others that are hurting. And I really, I just, I just had this moment of sheer relief and emotional movement around this reality of like how much power we do have. And yes, sound, of course, that frequency, and also like just the intention that you have there. And yes, holding those parts of her body, but also using your intention, and us, teaching our children like, okay, we want to be informed with this. This isn't the ideal that you are getting these shots or whatever it is, and it is what is. So how do we take our power back in this moment? I feel like that's the biggest gift that we can give to our children, right? And the trust in God that this path is forging us for whatever reason. We can't maybe see it right now, but this is what's happening. And to give that sense of sovereignty back to ourselves and our children. So thanks for sharing openly about that. And also, it was a beautiful reminder to me this morning around how much power we have, and how it'll be. I think of this too, like, oh, if I could get this healing, or if I can go to this place for my son, or for myself, or for others, if I'm often saying like, oh, if you can go to here, and do this or whatever. But the truth is, I think it was something that's really becoming distilled within me, especially with all this moving around, and the lack of security in my realm right now, is that I'm just seeing like, wherever you are, there you are. And where's the power and the sovereignty within ourselves to hold the space, uh and have the healing happen from the places that are infinite, that are Christed, that are God. Not that these out external places are not either, but we certainly have been trapped in that way of thinking, that, oh, that's the only one place we can get it, or that I have to travel, or I need the money, right? That's just part of the whole fucking, excuse my language, the whole freaking system is like, oh, you have to have the money to get that healing, or this, that, or the other, right? So yeah, just kind of tapping into that, and and as I'm saying it, I'm thinking of right now, our biggest challenge has been to have energy so that I can even partake in these types of discussions or whatever, because we're completely off grid. So um we're not set up with solar, so it's been very challenging to just complete the things that we really need to complete, because all of a sudden we don't have access to Wi-Fi or electricity even. And you know, I had a good movement of weeping this morning, of just being like so freaking pissed that there's all this free energy all around us, teeming from the stars, know, all of this quantum field energy that's just been like taken from us and controlled. And here we are paying hundreds of dollars for electricity, and it's like scrounging to get it together so I can get a freaking solar system, or system, so that I can have some electricity to participate with my friends on calls, or do human design readings, or be present for people as they're reaching out to me. And it's created a lot of frustration for me, but it's also just like a remembrance that it's there for us. It's just kind of unlocking the door, having those tumblers line up, and we know it's coming. That's why, or I'll speak for myself, I know it's coming. That's why I feel like I am so frustrated, because it's like I can taste it. It's just right there. But here we are. Here I am in this moment, with that frustration, charging my phone in the car, or doing this, that, or the other. So yeah, thanks for letting me share, and just wanted to comment on all of that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that, Lila. And I feel you there on the tasting it. And yeah, that's what can be. Yeah, it can certainly add to the challenge of learning about all this, is that intellectually we know, but it's even more than just intellectual. It's like you feel it. You feel. That's why I like to remind anyone who gets down in the dumps about where we are in the state of, and like fitting into society or any of that kind of stuff. It's like we're not made for that. Like everything within this system is so unnatural. Like limitations on resources and energy. Like that's so foreign. That's so alien to us. It's so strange to have that when we come from an abundant creation that is limitless, and we are limitless. We are infinite. So to have finite limitations imposed, and financial restrictions and all of that, it's like it feels so gross. It's so foreign. And it's through that contrasting experience that's what allows us to rekindle our connection to self in such a greater way. So to fall out of love so that I can fall into it again. We wouldn't really have the full range and dynamic of that expression without falling out. But yeah, I'm tired of falling out of it. I want to fall in love. I just want to fall in love and fall into this knowing, and and our true expression. And yeah, we're on the leading edge of that. So to manifest that external reality, it's like the waiting is the hardest part, as Tom Petty would say. But yeah, I feel you there, and thanks for sharing.
Yeah, exactly. And what a crew to get to wait with. I mean, I feel so blessed, and that's part of the frustration, because I just want to connect and be connected, and be there for the people that are, by the way, just to shout out to everybody who's reaching out and being patient with me. it really is not because I'm ignoring or don't want to be more present with you. It's just been a real shift from the matrix into the realm that I'm in a way that was unexpected. I think that it's been an eye opener. It's like I kind of knew it, but maybe I just didn't deeply see, how dependent I was on that. So it's good. It is good, and it's not like I'm wanting electricity so that I can go, not that this would be horrible or anything, but like go online and watch TV necessarily. It's like I really do want this energy. I want the energy. I want the quantum field so that I can increase the quantum field with others. So there's this interesting situation with it where it's not gluttonous. It really is in alignment with what my soul is meant to be doing, but then it's also like you know okay, it's there, the energy's not there, like go take a walk, or be where you are right now, right? So yeah, it's a good teacher, and it's also we're so close, and I know we're all having these challenges in different ways, whether it's finances or actual energy or living situations or whatever it is. And so, I hope by my sharing, everybody can feel a sense of familiarity with whatever it is that they're going through, and hear that I get that it's a challenge for everybody in whatever way they are experiencing it. So yeah, we'll get through this, and probably we'll look back and say like, oh my gosh, remember when we didn't have the access to this, and kind of laugh about it, like people and maybe even like romanticize it a bit, like, oh, wasn't that nice, know, as people were, using pilgrim wagons to travel across the country or whatever. It's like there's a bit of a romanticism about it, and I do think that I think that will exist, as we move forward. But of course, and why we're here is to keep the awareness alive of like what it was costing us to be using our life force to pay these electric bills, and all the other bills of that everybody's paying, mortgages and these kinds of things, and funding the cabal. So it's it's near and dear, of course, to all of us. I think being in these groups that we're really on the front lines, and I don't know, just everybody stop and give yourself a pat on the back or a big hug. Just we're all getting through it, but of course it's not easy. It's got its hardships and its challenges, and its moments of just like, why are people like why are people living off of the life force? Why have they how can these beings feel comfortable um doing this to the beings of the earth? There is a sort of like, what, why, so hopefully we'll get more information about it. But thanks, and um wonderful call today. I've really loved enjoying everybody's shares and contributions, and just hearing everybody's voice, connecting back in. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Lila. I've I've really enjoyed this today as well. It's been really been wonderful, and just on the whole reflecting back on these contrasting experiences that we've found ourselves in. It is something to imagine, just like telling children who did directly experience it, well, at least not in that physical body, about all of this, and how they're not going to believe it. A lot of things they're not going to believe what we went through or lived, how we lived in certain ways, because it's so, as I mentioned, so unnatural, so foreign. But that's what we'll do, is we'll share, and yeah, there will be some romanticizing, I'm sure, but also the, you know, the as that romanticizing also tends to forget about the shitty parts, and I'm certainly not going to forget those, and it will also be a important layer for us to continue remembering the shitty parts, not to dwell in them, or but to continue to heed future generations, to warn, not in like a fearful way, but just as like in Game of Thrones, it mentions winter is coming. You know, like to mention that this cycle will turn back again, to where darkness will have a chance to take over if we let it. So we have to remember the shitty stuff so that we don't let that happen. You know, so that we can carry these lessons through the next 12 to 13,000 years of spring and summer in this great year. So that when we start to fall, we don't fall as far. We can fall with grace, and we can carry the harvest through the winter, carry the light through, and continue our insistence that no, darkness, you're not going to reign supreme. You're not going to take over again. Evil will not step back into this space as a dominant force. But that only happens if we, if we remember. So that's sort of the, wow, I don't want to take away anything from romance and romanticizing and the fun and joy of certain elements. I also want to, I know that will be a big calling. It feels like a big calling for me to continue the reminder of like, yeah, that shit sucked. Remember when we were injecting poison to each other, and remember when we had to pay for electricity, and remember when, all of that, endless, and attempt to not have those stories turn into fantastical elements that don't seem true. You know, we can tell things in story form about the vampires, but don't forget that vampires are fucking real, and we can turn into them if we're not careful, and they will do the most horrible, disgusting things to the children if we let them. It's not just a storybook; it's a real element. So anyway, just wanted to add that layer to it as well, as the continual storytellers continue telling the story. So to remember those things as well.
Hey guys, it's Beth. Can you hear me?
Hey Beth, yeah, loud and clear.
Oh, okay, good. I was just going to listen today and it's been so good and I could just relate with so much. So I figure it's almost time to end. So I just couldn't resist like hopping on here and saying hi. I just got a power surge with what you were just sharing, Justin, about like, I guess I just want to thank you for like recognizing the magnitude of like what we've all had to like realize and understand and learn, and like how traumatic like that stuff is, because I can just relate to like so many times saying to myself like I can't even wrap my mind around this, like, and then something even more like wacky would happen, and I'm trying not to use negative terms, but we've most of us have probably been through some pretty horrific and just really mind-blowing experiences in this journey, and like it's a lot. So I'm so glad I got you guys here, and I'm so glad I tuned in today. And I just had some moments when you guys were sharing. Lila, it was so good to hear your voice. And when you were when you were talking about your challenges, I just connected with you, and it just may not be the same exact things, but the sensation that I have become familiar with is this feeling of frustration with all I want to do is make a difference. Less than that, all I want to do is get my needs met. And when we feel like we are struggling to access the resources to get our needs met, like that's a big, adjustment to make. But then I had to go into it deeper. Like for me, I was always, looking for, it was almost like instead of like from the medical standpoint of looking for a pill or a procedure or a cure, I had kind of gotten into this frantic way of looking for the next juice or the next cleanse or the next crystal, or and then we talked about that spiritual bypassing recently. I remember we had that discussion. It really made me aware of those things. But when I got down to it, in those times when I felt like my needs weren't being met, I really had to take a look at what are my needs versus my wants, and really just like, you know food or nourishment, shelter, and companionship are like the three basic ones that I think I found, in the things that I was reading. But we as a culture are so used to considering so many other things, basic needs. But anyway, that's kind of a little rant. I did want to touch in with Mike too. I was really glad to hear you, and I wanted to let you know a couple of things. Number one, you've been on my radar because I was in Cincinnati recently visiting family, and you came into my mind, and I thought about looking you up. I thought it would be neat to meet in person, but that didn't happen. I had other things going on, but I've still been curious about how you were doing, because I know some of the things that you've been through, and I knew that you were back at your home situation, but I hadn't heard you interacting much. So I really enjoyed hearing you share today, and I could notice a difference in your energy, a difference in your voice. It was more of a slower, calmer, like you said, observing, and that's real familiar to me. I think we share a lot of. I really went down a lot of rabbit holes and went into some really radical changes quickly, and yeah, I didn't go be incarcerated or anything like that, but I went through my own personal hell of discovering things. So I'm just emerging now from that solitude space and season, and it's been really strange because like it it comes on full force. Like I try to like tip my toe out the door, and then I'm all of a sudden meeting up with lots of new energies and personalities that I'm navigating and exploring, and just it's been a whirlwind. But I did want to just check in a little bit about me, so that's kind of what's up with me. But back to you, Mike. When you were sharing about your child and the shots, I felt so much of just the emotion you were experiencing, and I caught myself like holding space for you without even knowing it, and using my breath to try to move some of that energy through, and just know that you are receiving such love and intentions and highest prayers from everybody, I'm sure. And I was so glad when the conversation brought all that up. So it sounds like you've got a lot of good knowledge and resources about, the Reiki, and I'm just really glad that you're tapped into that. But it brought up memories of, you know, grieving my children. When my children were small, I was a nurse, and I remember feeling so conflicted when they're putting 4 shots in a baby's leg at once. And I'm a young mom in her 20s, and I didn't have the voice to say anything. I didn't really know anything as far as knowledge, but I knew in my heart something was wrong. And I've had to work through all those feelings. So and then now I have a granddaughter that I'm getting to know, and she's 4. So I'm pretty sure her mom is following standard medical stuff. So I really just felt a lot of connection when you shared that, and I know it's difficult to share tough things like that. So I really appreciate you being that vulnerable. And Yeah, just when it started, Justin, after the fruit talk or the sugar talk, when you were talking about how sometimes we go full strength into things and then we cause ourselves harm. Like, I think just from our personal talks, you know that I could really relate to that. And now that I'm kind of on the other side of a really tough couple of years, I'm seeing that I was kind of my own hand in some of that just by my obsession with getting well and thinking I was going to any lengths and I could just do it right. But I just needed time and space. And so, well, I feel like I'm just talking way too long, but I haven't talked for a while. So, anyway, I'm so glad you guys are here and everybody that shared, everybody's listening. Thanks for tuning in and sharing. That's all.
Thanks, Beth. Certainly not too long and not too much. It's always good to hear from you. And you you are just so consistent in sharing your experience, which is very helpful, inspiring to me, and I know for so many others as well, because we're all going through this, and we've all been through certain elements, and we're all going to go through certain elements, and doesn't mean that all our stories are going to be exactly the same, but these, yeah. So just your willingness to share that is always just so appreciated, and yeah. So thank you, thank you for sharing.
Hey Beth, thank you for all the kind words and thinking of me and holding space and um yeah, we're I just watched a really good movie, Freaky Tales. Um it's got Pedro Pascal. Um it's an anthropology that has like 4 or 5 different stories that all make up one larger story. And it's so good. I encourage everyone to check it out. But throughout these stories, there's like this lightning green energy that flows through these main characters that are going through these tribulations in their stories. And it's like it hit me when I was watching it. I was like, wow. I was like, that's us. We're we're trying our best in all this insanity to just be the calm in the storm and do what's right and stay on that side of morality, um and finding that balance in between action and inaction. um the meek shall inherit the earth, and um having to be wise enough in all this chaos when to realize just to sit back and observe and let things play out and just try to carry that signal and frequency of be a beacon, be a lighthouse. And um you know it this space is magnetic for that. That's one of the reasons that Justin is, among so many other reasons, is so critical in all of this. Is he's like a lightning rod for that green Christed energy. And so it's just a pleasure, like always, and a privilege to share this space with all of you, because that's how I view this group. And so thank you very much for sharing. It's amazing to hear from everyone. I love hearing from everyone. Uh, especially from people I haven't heard from in a long time. I know sometimes it's hard to open up that mic, but you know, being heard and um, sharing these same experiences, it's a part of like the healing process, and we can learn from each other and push forward in this. Whatever this is, this ever ever growing more bizarrely experience that we live in. The more you look at the big picture of everything, it just becomes more and more bizarre and grandiose. Like the truth is so grandiose. So it's like it's nice to have these spaces here to come and have that sanity check. Like, I'm not the only one seeing this and experiencing this story that's playing out. on this grand scale. But so yeah, thank you for sharing and the kind words, and um, yeah, amazing to hear from you.
Hey, Mike, I will mention something. I know you're not able to go in person, but I have a friend up there in Cincinnati that just opened a big healing center. He actually opened his second location, and I might be doing some work with him. And I could connect with you, on your personal messages about that. But if that's something you're interested in, but it is a lot of energy healing, sound healing, Reiki, and there is distance. And there is also like community, because once you are able to get out and do community things, he has like, I think, monthly or weekly spiritual discussions and Reiki shares and things like that, healing events that are free to the public or donation based. So I just wanted to leave that there in case that's something you might want me to send you a separate message about.
Yeah, absolutely, sister. Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah. Anybody else have something they want to share or experience they've had, topic to explore? Anything's on the table, anything is welcome. We can certainly start wrapping up if we're feeling complete, but just wanted to give an opportunity. I'm still driving, so um, yeah, happy to go any which way. So just let me know. Yeah, I'll pass it back. All right. Well, that might be a sign that we're feeling complete. This has been a very fulfilling, very nourishing discussion today. Really appreciate everyone for chiming in and jumping on and listening. And feel free to interrupt me if you do have something else you want to share. But I'll otherwise I'll just take that as a sign that it's a good time to close. So yeah, I will. I'm not sure if I'm just gonna get settled and land because I land fairly late tonight. But if I'm feeling inspired and energized tomorrow, then I'll let everyone know and we'll do a watch party tomorrow night. But otherwise, definitely next week we'll be back in the full swing of things. I've got some other ideas on conversations and presentations and things to go with, and yeah, I know Darth's been working on the next iteration of the religious series. So breaking down religious programming, and if you didn't get a chance to watch the, I think, 2 episodes that he did initially, those were phenomenal. And so we'll be doing more on that, specifically going into Islam first, and then going from there. And then, yeah, whatever else comes up along the way. So, as always, just have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are. Let that light shine. Don't hide it. Just let it shine. And that can happen in any way, whether it's just smiling or having a kind conversation with someone you meet or helping out someone. Any which way, just let that light shine. So we'll keep on having these conversations to help cultivate our light within and keep spreading it. So I love you all so very much. Take care, everybody.